We're going to jump into this series. This is part two of establishing yourself in God. And we're continuing with the second part of this, which really gets to the core of things, establishing a relationship with God. The whole aspect, the whole concept of Christianity and being saved has to do with relationship. I told you when we started this that this is really intended to be foundational discipleship course. Foundational, meaning it starts from the basis and builds up. And so before we go to a lot of other things, the branches of the tree, we want to talk about the roots. We want to talk about the base. And so last week we talked about who God is. This week we want to talk about what it means to have a relationship with God. Now this is scheduled for 2 weeks. I may try to complete this in 1 week and jump a little bit of ahead because that will give me an opportunity halfway through here to do kind of a review. There's a lot that's going on, a lot of things we'll be talking about, as you can see. And so I would like to be able to break in and do a review probably around here and then go into the second part of it. So we'll see how today goes. I'm not going to make any promises, but you can see all the different topics we're going to be covering over the next several weeks. Again, the basis of what your salvation is and is not about. We'll talk about baptism, both water and spirit. We'll talk about understanding God's will for your life. This is intended to be very practical. We'll talk about God's place in our lives and what place He should carry and how we need to align for that. We'll talk about God's promise to take care of you and what God's promises mean in your life. We'll talk about spiritual growth, spiritual development. We'll talk about spiritual gifts. We'll talk about eternity and what's next after this and how are we prepared for what's next and what's going to happen to those that aren't in Christ as well. Our responsibilities towards God and what it means, what God expects for us. And we'll talk about being part of the body of Christ. So all those things are things we're going to cover. These are foundational things to help us become the children of God, the disciples of Christ that He intends for us to be. So I encourage you, invite you to join us throughout this series. You're not going to want to miss it because it's going to build 1 week on top of the other as we go through this. So tonight we're going to jump into section number two, excuse me. And this section is going to now begin to, that's interesting, that camera's working there. These cameras are sometimes a little weird. Is that working? Yeah, working again. Cameras are sometimes a little weird. But anyway, we're going into section two on establishing yourself in God. I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, things you're not sure of, feel free to leave message, leave comments. We'll try to catch them. If we don't catch them now, we'll catch them after, or we can talk about it in a separate fashion. If you want to send us a direct message offline from the comments, however you like to ask your questions, just folks, don't let's not fight. For those that may be watching, observing, I'm not here to fight and challenge with you back and forth. I want to share with you the word, and if you have a true question, always grateful and willing to be able to answer and respond to it, even if it's a challenging one. So God desires relationship. This really is the core of the matter. This is what we truly need to understand. The whole aspect of us and God, before you get to being saved, before you get to all these other concepts, is understanding the character of God. And we always say the character of God never changes. He is who He is. That character emphasizes everything that He does. We're the same way. There's a character aspect of you and me, and it really helps define our behaviors. We are constrained by our character to do or not do certain things. We respond, interact based on our natural character. God has a character and He's consistent with it. He's a loving God. He's consistent with it. He's also a God of discipline. He's a God of judgment. In other words, He calls right right and wrong wrong. And He'll separate right from wrong. We saw that from the beginning with the devil and his angels. So He's a just God. At the same time, He's a loving and merciful God, willing to give many, many opportunities for correction, for submission, and particularly with us, who He considers to be His children made in His image. God is loving, and relationship with us is what we're all about. It's the reason why we were created. We were created for this purpose, to be in a relationship with God. I think we'll talk about this a little bit more a little later, but I want you to our uniqueness. But I want you to understand that relationship really is what it is all about. God desires relationship. He's always desired relationship with His people, which is us. And as a result of that, you see that throughout the scriptures. You see Him promising, you see Him pursuing, you see Him forgiving, you see Him making ways for us to be in relationship. A couple of scriptures that's here, and by the way, for those of you who have it, we have workbooks that include all of these things that we do, that we're talking about. Every one of these lessons is compiled. Let me show you this very quickly in a workbook that we have made available to people at and through the church. So the whole series is together for you with all these scriptures. We want you to have those so that you can refer back to them, because this is the way we understand and learn. You don't want to just hear it one time. You can go back, refer, the questions come back up. You're able to reflect. So if you're interested in having one of those, reach out to the church. We'd love to be able to share that with you. Just come by the service on Sunday. We have extras there. If you're not in the local area, we can make arrangements to get one to you as well. Bear with me again. I'm a little bit messed up in the head with these sinuses. So I'm drinking tea and trying to keep myself together here. It looks like that camera's freezing again. Let's try that one. That one won't. Okay. Anyway. So God has always desired to be with His people from the very beginning of our creation all the way through the end of time. Here's a couple of scriptures that emphasize this. In 1 Kings 6, 11 through 13. I believe these are all in the NIV version of the Bible. It says, "The word of the Lord came to Solomon. As for this temple you are building, if you follow my decrees, carry out my regulations, keep all my commands, and obey them, I will fulfill through you the promise I gave to your David your father, and I will live among the Israelites and will not abandon my people." Remember, it was sin that caused God to be separated from His people. But God is committed to being with us and has done so many things to make a way around and to eliminate and to cover sin so that we could be in relationship. He's always desired to be in the midst. Zechariah 2, 10 and 12, 10 through 12. "Shout and be glad, O daughter of Zion, for I am coming and I will live among you, declares the Lord. Many nations will be joined with the Lord in that day and will become my people. I will live among you, and you will know that the Lord God Almighty has sent me to you. The Lord will inherit Judah as His portion in the Holy Land and will again choose Jerusalem." God desires to be in the midst. In 1 Corinthians 6 and 16, it says, "What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God." 2 Corinthians. "And He has said, as He has said, I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people." God has this desire for connection. The Bible tells us in John, Jesus spoke and said that God is a spirit. They that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. It said, "For the Father seeks such to worship Him." God has always desired to be in and with and around and in the midst of the people that were created to be His children, that were created to have fellowship with Him. And this is the true reason we were created, to have a fellowship with God at an intimate level. When we think about that word intimate, we're not talking, of course, about sexual, but intimate means personal. A lot of times we think of intimacy as only being sexual. The concept of sexuality being intimate is that it is personal, is that it is uniquely bonded and connected and personal experience. And that's why marriage is so sacred. And by the way, marriage is in here too, if we get to that before the end of our time. And so God made us to be in an intimate relationship with Him. Now, He's a spirit, and His connection to us is spiritual. That's why that scripture says we must worship Him in spirit and in truth. To truly have an intimate relationship with God, it's not coming through your hands. It's not even coming through your mouth. It may be expressed out of your mouth, but it's coming from your spirit. When you truly worship God, it's more than just singing the song. It's releasing in your through your flesh what is happening in your spirit. What happens on the outside should actually be an expression of what's going down in your spirit. Now, when it's in your spirit, it has to come out, right? And so there's this pouring out of you that comes when we're truly worshiping God. It pours out in the natural, but it's really happening in your spirit. Sometimes we have to initiate things in our flesh to align it to what's happening in our mind and in our spirit. What am I saying? There are times when you're tired, you're upset, you're going through a lot, you're in pain, right? And it's hard to get your spirit really tied and connected back to that. Lord, I love you. Lord, I surrender. And many of the times we do it is by doing it first in the flesh, especially through our mouths. Because when you speak it, out of the mouth comes that abundance. Your mouth is releasing things that begins to connect in your spirit. That's why we say it's so important what you say. The Bible says life and death are in the tongue. When you begin to speak life, when you begin to speak love, when you begin to speak worship, the intent is it's not just what's coming out here, but the intent is to get your spirit lined up to what you're saying. The reason we sing songs, I'm sidetracking just a little bit to help you understand. The reason we sing songs in praise and worship isn't just because of those songs glorifying God, and it's not even just about making us feel good. A lot of times we like to sing our song because it makes us feel good. But what it's about is it's about drawing us into the right spirit. So when we sing of the joy of the Lord, when we sing of how good God is, when we sing my response, I'm never turning back. We're not just singing those words, we're allowing those words to saturate into our spirit so that we can truly have that connection and relationship to what we're saying to God through the spirit. That's why it is important. You can say, yeah, it's in my spirit, I don't have to say anything. But really the two are interacting together. What you're saying is being echoed in your spirit. What's in your spirit should be echoed in what you say. We actually flip it sometimes in worship where we go from pre-written words and thoughts to just releasing. And so when I'm singing a song, when I'm doing that, I'm using those words to align my spirit. But then I want to pour out from me what's personal to me. Now it's getting even more intimate. It's not just the words that somebody else is saying. That's why sometimes in the middle of worship we'll stop singing the song, the words of a song, because now it becomes more intimate. I've gotten in my spirit a reminder, reflector of who and what God means to me, and now I want to pour out what's personal. Whether that comes out in your English words, whether it comes out in tongues, whether it comes out in groans, whether it comes out in crying, it's a release from your spirit. So understand the whole reason, this is why we're in this chapter, the whole essence of all of this ties back to having relationship. If there's no relationship, it's vain. It has no strength, it has no power. It's that connection to what's happening in your spirit that's key, because that's where you're making connection with God. They that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So let's keep going here. Sorry, I went to the wrong thing. Let's go there. Okay. So God has progressively sought, it says, to be closer and closer. You see that throughout the Bible. I tell people from time to time that the Bible really is a story of God being connected, a connection being broken, and then God doing so much to reestablish that connection, ultimately to the point where we are reestablished with him again permanently in the new heaven and the new earth. It's like that rags are riches to rags, or riches to rags, riches to however you want to count. We start with God in the garden, connected with him, created by him, that God comes and visits his people in the garden on a regular basis. There's fellowship there. There's connection. There's nothing that separates us from God. Sin comes in and we're separated. We're pushed out in order to not be locked into that state. And then most of the Bible, what we see is God working out a plan, a way for us to be reconnected back to him. And so all of this, let's jump down to the next piece. It says God was made, and we were made in his image. We were designed for a relationship with God. God said, let us make man in our image and our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over the livestock, over all the earth, over all the creatures that move along the ground. The key thing is, let us make man in our image. God made us in his image. That is the critical key here. He made us to be like him. Well, what does that mean? He made us, number one, to be little creators. We have the ingenuity, the ideas, the mindset to create. We don't just copy. We don't just do by instinct. We learn, develop, and build. We make something new out of something that wasn't there. That is the image of God. We are to have dominion over all things. And that also, let them rule over, is dominion. That also is being godlike, to have authority. God delegated to us authority in the earth realm. So he made us, in essence, to be little him. What's a little you? That's your children. That's why we're considered to be the children of God, because we were created for him. Now, God is not physical, to have an offspring physically, but God has the ability to create us in his image, so that, and in doing so, in creating us, he made us to be his children. Somebody said, I mean, sound far away. Not sure what's happening. Everything is connected, and I see everything, but I don't know what to tell you. Everything seems to be okay. But I noticed when I first came on, that stream was sounding a little weird, so let's just pray our way through it. All right? Ability to make choices and decisions beyond instinct. We talked about that already. Capability of loving and caring for others in a very special way. All these things are aspects of who and what God created us to be. We were created to choose him, to choose to love him. That's an important statement, because it's critical for us to understand that God made us with the ability to choose. And the intent of that is that we should serve him, not simply because we were created to be creatures to serve him, but because we would understand the value of the relationship and love him. Back to relationship. The whole core of this is about that. This is the intent of God, that we would be in a bonded relationship with him. This is why he made us the way that he made us. This is what he looks for us. And so then if if we are not in that relationship, if we're not in that arrangement, then we're outside of our purpose, right? If we choose, and we have the right to choose, I'm not going to serve God, thank you, but I'm going to do my own thing outside of God, or I'm going to serve somebody else, then we're outside of that relationship and we're outside of our purpose. And so understanding what we're created to do and created to be, and then how that ties, is very important. Now, there are lots of different types of relationships. Of course, there's friend relationships, there's acquaintances, there's co-workers, there's family, there's lovers. It's the depth of the relationship. There's acquaintances. I know you. Yeah, how you doing? Smile at you. I'm acquaintance with most of my neighbors, right? I know them. I can wave at them. We can talk. We can have good conversation. We may even socialize. But it only goes so. I don't know if most of them are not friends. They're just acquaintances, right? I'm familiar with them. I know who they are. A friend is someone who has a closer connection to me. Co-workers, a different level of relationship. I spend time with you. Sometimes I have to depend on you, work with you, interact with you to different things, different type of relationship. Family, okay? Love you, hate you, right? Good days, bad days. But we're bonded, we're family, we have something in common. Lovers are a whole nother level of intimacy. I want you to understand that God created these concepts in the natural that we see and experience to help us to better understand him and relationship with him. So when we fall in love with someone here, we have, I'm missing it today. When we fall in love with someone here, it is a glimpse of understanding of what God is looking for from us. And those of you who really truly been in love understand that loving someone is more than just about the physical nature of them. more than about what they look like. You know, some people can only love you as long as you look good. And you think you love them because they look good. And you get old and we don't look the same. You still love them. Love is beyond just the physical aspect of it. Love is something that bonds to that person in a more intimate and personal way. Love is beyond the sexual aspect of it, any sexual satisfaction. But the concept of sex is a concept of unity of one, two become one flesh. And that is a concept that God wants us to understand. It is a spiritual concept that God looks for, even in terms of us, to be united, to be bonded with Him in a true element of one accord. In other words, our relationship with God is more than about being friends, it's more than about being acquaintances. But understand, a lot of the times that's the way we'll treat God, either like friend or like family. If, hey man, love you, I'll see you when I see you, right? Friends, acquaintances. God is not looking for you to be his acquaintance. He's not looking for you to be his casual friend. He's not looking for you to be, his date on occasion. God is looking for a bonded, committed, long-term relationship with you that is going to last, that's going to go through thick and thin, that will trust him even when things don't seem to be working the way that you think they should work, that will lean into him. It's another aspect of challenge to us in relationship is this trust each other enough to lean into it, right? Because we like to oftentimes kind of stay at a certain distance, especially in terms of trust. What I'll tell you, you don't tell your friends everything you tell your husband or your wife, right? You won't expose everything to an acquaintance that you will in your personal relationship. And sometimes, y'all know, even in our personal relationships, we struggle, right? To be truthful and open about everything. But God is teaching us through the concept of relationship of marriage what it means to have a personal and intimate relationship with God. He doesn't want to be your friend. He wants to be bonded to you. He wants to be closely, intimately connected to you. And so that's what this concept of relationship is all about. I hope this is helping somebody to see this in a broader perspective, because this is the whole basis of the Bible. This is the whole basis of salvation. This is the whole basis of relationship with God, is having this understanding of what God desires from you. Now let's continue on. So there are different types of relationships we've talked about. Now relationships are built on a lot of things. They're built on trust, faith, love. These are things that have to be established in a relationship for it to truly be effective. Communication, right? Commitment to each other, loyalty. Some of these words sound familiar. You may have some more, but understand, these are the same things God is looking for in terms of your relationship with him. These are the things that make a relationship with a spouse, husband or wife, effective. You got to have this stuff, right? You got to be able to trust each other. You have to believe in each other, support each other. There has to be love. And remember, love is selfless, and does not necessarily need to be done for to do back. You have to pour in. Anybody that's married will tell you, I always feel, come on, y'all, I always feel like I'm pouring more into it than I get out of it. How many people will align with that? Everybody that's married feels that way, because love is about pouring in more so than about getting out. When people get into relationships that are conditional like that, they typically will not work. If you're not giving me what I need, I'm not giving you what you need. Both parties have to have a mindset to pour into and advance the other. If you're not getting into a relationship, oh, now we're into the marriage part already. But if you're not getting into the relationship with that mindset, I am here to pour into you and make your life better, to make you a better person. And I'm trusting that being in this relationship, I'm going to become a better person. But my real objective is to pour into you. The reason I'm marrying you is not because of what I'm getting from you. It's because of what I want to give to you. That is the same mindset we should have about God. Now listen, oftentimes our mindset about God is I'm going to connect to God so I can get from God. If I'm under God, I'm going to be blessed. I'm going to receive. I'm going to be prosperous. God's going to give me things. He's going to use me. He's going to elevate me. Listen, our relationship with God, See, this is why this is the foundation. Our relationship with God should not be simply about what God is going to do for us. It ought to be about what we want to do for God. We see this in the relationship of David and God, and this is why David calls him a man after his own heart, because David wanted to do for God. He appreciated, he valued what God had done for him so much, but he had a mindset that says, "What shall I render unto to God for all of his goodness? God's been so good to me. I love this relationship and I want to pour into him." Now, don't think David didn't have tough days, because David had times when he didn't know whether he was going to live another day. He had times when his enemy was chasing him down, but he didn't take it out on God. Man, if you were really my God, why am I going through this? Why am I suffering through this? Why do I got to deal with this? He always trusted God, and he always worshiped God. He always listened to God. It's the relationship that he had. It's the relationship that you have with God that is important and that is valuable. Because if your relationship is just a gimme relationship, what do we call those again? I can't remember the word, but people in relationships just to get out of it. I can't think of the word right now. It's probably better that I don't. But y'all know what I'm talking about. In the relationship for the wrong reasons, for what you can get out of it versus what you're there to give. And that was what we needed, the mindset we need to have with God. We need to be married to God, the bride of Christ, giving ourselves to him and submitting to him and trusting him. That's what it is intended to be. So there are various types again of relationships that we can talk about. We've talked about some of them already. There's personal, intimate relationships. There's monogamous relationships, just you and me, versus idols. What's idols? Idols means a whole bunch of other stuff in your relationship. We talked about that a little bit Sunday. We're coming on Friday to deal with this. Idols is the concept of in relationship of having too many other things in the middle of your relationship. We think about idols as being, some little physical thing. That's not what idols is about, right? Those things are only relevant because they were trusting in those things. We have a whole lot of things that don't look like little statues that get in the middle of our relationships today. Our relationship specifically with God. Think about your marriage. How many things get in the middle of your relationship? That's a problem, right? When people get in the middle of your relationships, when things get in the middle of your relationships, when priorities are thrust and get in the way of your relationship, there's a problem there. It's the same thing with God. When we allow things to get in the way, they're idols. We talked on Sunday about Mizpah, and in Mizpah they went to pour out. They had to throw away their idols and pour out from the water of the things that they had done. Somebody said kids. And pour it out so that you can't take it up again. That's a matter of removing the things that are in the way. This is what we're doing on this service on Friday. I encourage you to join us at 7:30. We are coming together to pour out those things that are idols in our relationship with God, so that we can have a true personal one-on-one relationship, intimate with him. Doesn't mean that there's nothing else in your life. We're all married. We all have other things in our lives. It's a matter of where you put them and position them in your life. That's key and that's critical. Where does it sit? Because when it sits in the way of your relationship with God, that's the problem. So understanding how to balance those, how to put God first. So many of us as Christians say, "Oh yeah, God's first." But the reality is our actions don't speak like our words. It's important for us to understand that God doesn't see just what you say. He sees what you do, and not only what you do, but he sees what's going on in your heart. He knows when something else is more important to you than he is. So if I want to keep this going, I don't know if I'm going to make it in 1 week or not, because we still got quite a bit to go. But these are the elements: personal, intimate, monogamous, two-way communication is part of a type of relationship that God's looking for. In other words, we got to be able to talk to each other, to connect, which means you got to give it time. You have to give it time to have communication with God. Oh, I know time. Time is a tough one. But we have to be able to put time into any relationship if you're going to build it. Think about when before you got married, for those of you married, when you dated, you gave time. You gave priority to each other, right? All the things that other things you had going, they didn't even know. Because the only time they saw you, you were looking in their eyes, they were looking in your eyes, you were sitting somewhere over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever you were doing, you were listening to music. You gave your relationship time. And in that time, you were intimate in terms of talking with each other, spending time with each other. And the time allows you to build your relationship. Then comes life. Then you have kids. Then you have jobs. Now you got to make more money to pay for everything. So you got all these distractions. And your relationship suffers if you don't figure out how to maintain time for it. If you don't maintain time for your relationship with God, it suffers. It's inherent. And so you have to be able to give the appropriate amount of time to your relationship. So all these things are part of it. Commitment is part of it has to be a mutual commitment to each other. I should probably put mutual on that, right? Because it has to go both ways. Now, in terms of our relationship with God, God is always doing his side of it. He's faithful to his commitments. God will always do what he says. The problem is we get distracted. We come in, come out. We go up, we go down. We get on fire, we pull back, right? We get distracted by the many different things. Commitment is key if you want to see your relationship with God truly become what it's supposed to be. And in this concept of next level, and what we said on Sundays when we're talking about next level, we're not just talking about next level in terms of your greatness or the things you get. It's about next level in terms of your closeness to God. When it comes to drawing closer to God, you're going to have to be committed. You're going to have to be consistent. You're going to have to be willing to give God time. These are the things that will open up God to you so that you can come closer to him. And the closer you get to him, not only the more aware you're going to become of him, but the more like him you're going to become. The more of that atmosphere is going to change you. The things of his that he can pour into you and trust you with all become expand as you draw closer to him. But you've got to be committed to it. You've got to have that right priority to it. You've got to be faithful. Obedience is important in terms of our relationship with God, and obedience is based on trust. You have to be trustworthy, and you have to trust him. It's got to go both ways. We know God is trustworthy. But you got to be trustworthy. You got to be someone God can trust. Are you going to get the big head? That's what they say in my day. You're going to get the big head if God gives you certain things and allows you to have certain things, and he uses you in a certain way. Are you going to get lost in that? Are you going to be so overwhelmed about the attention and people, being nice to you and paying attention to you that you get distracted, right? You've got to be trustworthy with what God puts in you and what God does with you. Are you going to have to then just kind of blow your own horn about what God has given to you and doing through you? Right? There's a difference between a testimony and blowing your own horn. Blowing your own horn is lacking in humility. A testimony is giving glory to God. And so relationship with God is about obedience, not servitude. God is not looking for you to be his servant. He's looking for you to be his child. He's looking for you to be his lover. He's looking for you to have a relationship with him where he can pour love into you and you'll pour love into him. So it's quarter of. I'm not going to probably get through the whole thing, but let me start this concept of covenant here. I think that's as far as we'll get tonight. So the hopefully idea of getting through all in one week, it's not going to happen, I don't think, but I want to start this concept, and we'll build on this next week with some examples of it. Covenant is a concept of relationship. Covenant is a concept of being connected and committed to each other. Covenant is about a commitment. I'll say again, Marriage is a covenant, it's a commitment. We'll talk about that later. But the concept of a covenant is a relationship, a commitment to each other. So it is a contract in its root form. Covenant is as a contract, a mutual agreement between two parties. We are in agreement, and to that there is a mutual understanding of what's involved, who's responsible for what. So the purpose is to create a mutual commitment of an understanding, right? When we join into covenant, we are going to be committed to the same things. We both understand what's involved in it, and we're in agreement that this is our covenant. When I was talking on Sunday about Mizpah, and I was saying that Jacob and his father-in-law Laban had met there, and they set up a set of rocks, and they made an agreement that from this point forward, we're going to go our separate ways. And this is to solidify and confirm the fact there's agreement between us and that God is watching. You're going to commit to your side, I'm going to commit to my side. They were making a covenant with each other, an agreement of mutual understanding. And this is what's going to happen. In essence, it's like signing a contract. We write out all the words of the contract, defining what our relationship is. We do business contracts on my job all the time. I have to read and review all these little lines of detail of what our agreement is. If you're not careful in business, sometimes some a little small print will get you. We had one get us this week in a contract that we had, and found out, oh, there's a clause in here that says X, Y, and Z. We're bound to that agreement because we signed it. Even though it didn't come up till now, we're like, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of a problem, right? So because we signed the agreement, we're bound to it. That is a contract, that is a covenant. So the elements of a covenant as we see them in Scripture. And by the way, the concept of covenant is one that has gone through many, many different types of people, types of cultures have this concept of covenant. Oftentimes, with your neighbor, if I'm a tribe here and you're a tribe over there, we may have a covenant that we're not going to attack each other. And if somebody attacks either of us, we're going to come to each other's aid. Governments have covenants. What you see in NATO right now is a covenant agreement amongst nations to say if anybody attacks one of us, they got to attack us all. Right? And so you have all these different elements of mutual agreements, covenants between the two. From a biblical perspective, we see that there are these different elements that are tied to most covenants. First of all, there's the terms, there's the words of it itself, what the agreement is, all the things that we're committing to. There is spiritually, and in the tradition of the Old Testament, there is a sacrifice associated with the covenant. There's blood that's shed. Sometimes you'll see certain people in relationship where they would cut their own hands. I saw one on television the other night. They cut their own hands. They allow their blood to mingle with the blood of another person, and that blood then means that there's a joining between them. So blood is a unique concept of covenant, something sacrificed for the sake of this agreement. A seal is some kind of a symbol. In the case of Mizpah, it was the rock pile that they made, which was the symbol, the reminder that a covenant has been made. And so it confirms the authority to initiate a covenant. In other words, when I have a seal as a bishop, you have a bishop's seal. If I write something and I stamp it with that seal, that shows my authority and designation to confirm that this is a true and legal document. Today you have notaries, and you get a covenant written, you both sign it, you have a notary that stamps it, that says, yes, this is valid, it is real, it is official. So responsibilities of a covenant, both sides have responsibilities to it. Each side is written out and defined what it is, whether it's mutual or whether it's unique. You may have responsibility for one part, I have responsibility for a different part. We may have the same responsibility mutually to each other. However, the agreement is that's what you put in that, and then both sides of it have certain responsibilities to it. And when it comes to God versus man, God takes care of us, we honor him. They're not equal, right? Because we can't provide for God what God provides for us. And so our responsibility to him is to honor and obey. His responsibility to us is to take care of us. You can see why this aligns itself with marriage. And the reason I say that is for you to understand that God created the concept of marriage to image the concept of what he has in mind for us. And so many of the things that we see in the natural, both in nature and in terms of how relationships go in particular, are designed by God, and you see them in the Bible to find out certain ways because they exemplify the type of relationship that God is looking for us. That's why God will never, I don't care what anybody says, God will never approve of polygamy. He'll never approve of you having multiple men, multiple women, multiple intimate relationships. God will never. This goes back again to the character of God. God is a God of intimacy and personal relationship. And so he's looking for us and him and nothing in between. And so the concept of saying it's okay to have this and that and this chick on the side and this dude and mutual these other things, that's not what was ordained because that's not the character that God designed for us to have. Mutuality of our relationship is vital and important. So the breaking of the covenant discontinues the relationship. That's why, again, in marriage, adultery breaks the relationship, right? It is the concept, again, I'm jumping ahead, but of two becoming one flesh, and now adultery breaks and tears that relationship. Divorce is so painful because it is a tearing of flesh. Hang on to that. We'll get back to that. But the breaking of a covenant discontinues the relationship. It means there is a loss of privilege. What does that mean? Whatever privileges you had in being in relationship with God are lost when you break the covenant, when you don't keep to your side of it, when you are unfaithful, when you become overly distracted. You lose the relationship, you lose the things that come along with the relationship. Many times what we see in the Bible is that they consistently and continuously broke their side of the covenant. They got distracted by other things. And by the way, these things typically don't happen overnight. They happen over time. As we get busier, as we get more distracted, as we become more successful. Sometimes success is the curse of relationships. Y'all can write that down. Oftentimes, success is the curse of relationships because the more successful you become, the busier you can become, the more distracted you become. So you have to be conscious and careful that in all of your success, even in terms of success of your relationship, I got a wife, I got a kid, I got a good family, I got home. Success can become your biggest distractor to your relationship. You have to learn how to carry both. That's why some people can't have both. They can't be rich and still serve God. Hello. Some of us can't do it. And God won't put you in that situation because you can't handle it. That's why he's careful to measure what you can handle. So the story of the talents, or the talents that God gives to his servants, 1, 2, and 5. He gives us, the Bible says, according to what we're able to handle. Some of us can't handle but so much because we get distracted, we get lost. And so when you break the covenant, there is a loss of privilege. And so you need to be conscious that you keep that covenant. The children of Israel were always successful as long as they kept that covenant in full force and in front of them. When they became distracted, that's when they lost the covering. That's when they lost the relationship. And God was patient and tolerant and gave them time. But sometimes the more you tiptoe into the other direction, the deeper in the water you'll tend to go. And as a result of that, you'll get yourself into problems. So let's just jump a little bit into this first one. I have several different examples of covenants, and we'll pick up some of this again next week and continue it. But the first one we see is the relationship between God and Adam. It is a covenant between them, and the Bible talks about it. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. We talked about some of this already. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful increase in number, fulfill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours. God gave them dominion. God gave them authority. God gave them everything that they needed. He's provided their resource to them. And all he gave them as a responsibility was really to tend to the garden, to be obedient to him. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, it says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and care for it. Not a whole lot of work, mostly care, right? His responsibility, there was nothing near like what it is to us today or what it became them after sin. But he's there to be responsible for it. The Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat of any tree in the garden, but you must not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you shall surely die. So we see, here's the commitment of the covenant. The covenant is, I've created you, I'm putting you in the garden, I'm making you responsible for it, I'm giving you authority over it, you're going to take care of it, you can eat of anything, but you're restricted from this one tree in the garden. That you will keep constrained from, that you will keep sacred to me. You will not even touch it. It's not for you. I'm retaining that for myself, for purposes that you may not fully understand, but this is what I'm telling you to do. Follow me, obey me, these instructions, we're good. So you got an agreement. All you got to do is follow the agreement. You're in good shape. In terms of the blood, the sacrifice that was made for this in the Bible, what we see is Adam's rib is taken from him, and from him he creates woman. And so this represents the sacrifice that was taken out of Adam to create the woman for him. The seal of this is this tree of life within the garden. It is sacred. It is the remembrance between us that we have an honored agreement. All this is yours, but keep this sacred for me. Don't even touch it. I believe that God still today calls for us to have something in our life that is kept sacred to God. I think this is one of the other things that we have lost in the modern day church, the concept of keeping something sacred for God. In all the things that God gives you, should be in our mindset something we hold fast for God. This is exclusively for God. In the old days, they used to have in your house a prayer closet or prayer room, right? Listen, kids, don't be playing around in that closet. That's my sacred place for God. The concept of keeping something sacred has been throughout the Bible. The concept of tithing is to keep one portion of what God has given you sacred to God. But we found today we've lost that concept of sacredness, and so everything becomes a if then, a maybe, as long as it works, possibly, blah blah blah. And we've lost this concept of no. Understand how to keep something sacred. We used to have in the Old Testament times and in some other cultures specific prayer times a day. I will pray this time, this time, this time. It's keeping it sacred to God. We used to have you pray before you go to bed at night. You pray before you get up when you get up in the morning, and it was almost sacred. There's a difference between it becoming tradition and it being sacred, right? We used to fast in my former organization every Wednesday, sacred. But you do have to keep the difference between sacred and religious, traditional. And sometimes when things are so consistent, they fall into tradition. There's some churches that have communion every first Sunday, but you got to be careful that it doesn't become tradition and religious, because we start thinking that thing is the important thing. It's not the thing, it's the fact that I'm doing it in honor and remembrance of God. That's why Jesus says, whenever you do this, do it in remembrance of me. Anytime we take communion, we should all be there. We should all be making our way to a communion service when that time comes, because it is time to honor Christ in a sacred fashion. When we fast, sacred time to God. Prayer time that's sacred to God. We've lost so much of that concept today to the anything goes kind of mindset of this day. And we need to learn and remember from the very beginnings here, we see in Adam and Eve, keep something sacred to God. I challenge every Christian in terms of your relationship. The seal concept of putting up the stones or of the tree or tithing, whatever, it was there to be a reminder to them of the covenant we have. I encourage you to make something in your life that's sacred to God so that whenever it comes up, whenever you do it, you're reminded of my commitment to God. That's what Sundays used to be, right? Or the Sabbath was all about. Keeping it holy, not the day, keeping the relationship and the concept of putting God first, holy, sacred before God. I'm telling you, we've lost that concept. We really need to bring that back into the church and back into our personal understanding in terms of our relationship with God. Well, our time is just about wound up. I'm going to wind it down here. I wasn't able to do it all in 1 week. If I really pressed, I probably could have, but we'll pick it up next week as is scheduled to do so. And we're going to show you some more examples and some deeper things surrounding covenant and relationship. We'll talk more about the marriage covenant because it's so, and we'll talk about the New Testament covenant. Two very important things for us to discuss that reflect to us even more so today in a personal way.